King Charles continues to side with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle over his eldest son, Prince William. And I guess by virtue of the fact that she is his wife, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. And this is coming in so many disturbing ways to me. And perhaps the report that I think will stun royalists the most is that, according to Rob Shuter, King Charles is now considering opening up Balmoral to Harry and Meghan, despite specific objections from Prince William. So we're going to analyse this with Brittany, editor of the Royal News Network, imminently. But first, I want to take you through this new reporting from Rob Shuter, who writes, King Charles III is quietly considering a dramatic and deeply personal move to mend his fractured relationship with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, opening the gates of his most private sanctuary, Balmoral Castle. This is not Buckingham Palace. Balmoral is different. It is Charles's home, personally owned by the monarch and held by the royal family since Queen Victoria and Prince Albert purchased it in 1852. The sprawling Scottish estate has long served as the Windsor's emotional refuge, a place of tradition, privacy, and unguarded family time, although I'd say it was closer to Queen Elizabeth II than Charles. Shuter says that sources say Charles may be willing to share it. This is Charles's most personal residence, a palace insider tells me. Offering Harry and Meghan time at Balmoral is an enormous gesture. It signals trust, forgiveness, and a genuine desire to heal. According to sources, the proposal would not involve any transfer of ownership or permanent arrangement. Instead, Harry and Meghan would be invited to stay during select family gatherings, a carefully calibrated olive branch designed to show the door to reconciliation is still open. But another source reveals William is strongly opposed. He believes it's too much too soon and fears it could reopen wounds that have barely begun to heal. Those close to the Prince of Wales say Balmoral is anything but neutral ground. It is where loyalties are tested, where family history weighs heaviest, and where the brothers' rift could either mend or fracture beyond repair. Still, the king appears resolute. With the royal divide now stretching across years and continents, Charles reportedly sees this as one of the last meaningful gestures left, not as monarch, but as a father. He knows time is precious, the insider added. This is about family, not protocol. If extended, the invitation would mark one of the most intimate overtures yet in the Sussex saga and could redefine the future of the royal family's most painful divide. So, Brittany, look, this is interesting because what is very clear to me is, yes, Charles is considering potential offers to Harry about where they could possibly stay during their time in the United Kingdom. Now, of course, that is concerning. It's going to worry a lot of people. But the Daily Mail just 2 weeks ago actually had to delete a story from online suggesting that it could be Highgrove, because, of course, that is now actually under the control of William via the Duchy of Cornwall. But do you think this would even suit Harry and Meghan? Because, to be honest, I don't think they want to spend much time in Scotland. What they really want is some type of royal residence with royal security of their own in either Windsor or somewhere in central London, because that's where they want to be doing business. So I don't even know if this potential offer would even solve the issue, if you see what I'm saying.
I do, Dan. And honestly, I'm not sure I totally buy this story, because Balmoral would be the last place I would think Meghan Markle would ever want to go. It is not her style. She is not a country girl. I don't think she particularly likes being outside, especially being in the wet Scottish weather, I think would drive her bonkers. So if this was the overture of peace, it's definitely the wrong one, I think, to make to her. Harry and Meghan, of course, want to be in the center of the action. They want to be in a place like London. That is where they would prefer to be. And Harry, of course, has been offered, let's say, Buckingham Palace to stay in or something like that. But for the royal family, the problem with Harry and Meghan is that you can't let them have, quote unquote, free reign of a property or allow people to go in and out, because they have proven that you can't trust them to sort of stick to protocol. They might invite somebody in to, let's say, film or record or something like that. And so the royal family always gives them very structured and controlled, I think, palaces for them to stay in. So I think beyond Buckingham Palace, I don't think Harry and Meghan will receive many offers, maybe Sandringham for Christmas or something. But I don't think an overture to stay at Balmoral will move the needle at all in their relationship.
No, indeed. But I guess the reason why we have this Prince William concern, and I think it is a legitimate concern, is that on every major issue at the moment, Brittany, Charles seems to be siding with Harry and Meghan. And I mean, there's a whole load, right? You know, if you think back to last year with the meeting, for example, and I mean, you come in, Brittany, but it does feel like this is now a regular thing. And of course, you've got the Royal Rota who don't want to talk about this. And I know there's lots of royal fans who don't want to believe it, but sometimes you've just got to trust me. This is going on.
I really do think, Dan, there has been a breakdown in the relationship between Charles and William
Yes.
over Harry. I think I want to say between maybe, let's say, 2020 and maybe up until about 2022, 2023. I think the two of them had grown a lot closer. We have that great picture of William, I think, or Charles resting his head on William's shoulder as they're doing a walk out in the country. But I think when it comes to the issue of Harry, William's like Charles, in his effort to, I think, kind of try to bring his younger son in, is alienating his older son and by extension, alienating both his children in one way or another. And the reality for Charles is that Harry at this point is completely led by Meghan Markle. She pretty much makes all the decisions in their relationship. And Meghan will never be happy or satisfied. And Harry at this point remains angry and bitter at the world over the mistakes he's made. He blames other people, but they're his mistakes. And so Charles, in this effort to, I think, try to kind of bring Harry in, has the after effect of, I think, alienating his firstborn son. And that's not, I don't think, a very positive development. And I don't think it's particularly helpful. And I don't fault Charles at all for wanting a relationship with Harry because he is his son. But I think Charles has to very seriously consider here, hey, you know, he has to, I think, have boundaries set up because unfortunately, it seems like to me, Charles is leaving himself open for Harry to basically steamroll him. And having a supporter with William would be much more helpful there. But I think William, especially with Catherine's diagnosis and those sorts of things, is like, I don't want to deal with Harry. Harry is an unnecessary stress in our lives, and I am done. But Charles still wants it, and I think it is causing tension in their relationship for sure.
It absolutely is, because you're totally right, Brittany, to say things were really good. Mm-hmm. Things had massively improved. It has always been quite a tense relationship for a whole load of reasons. But I would argue over the course of that pandemic, over the course of the late Queen Elizabeth's deaths and Prince Philip's death, Charles and William were absolutely in lockstep. But it was when Charles started to open up to the idea of, oh, there is a path back for Prince Harry, that William just couldn't cope with, because for him, the only way to secure the future of the royal family is to keep Harry and Meghan in exile. I need you to do something for me right now. It is free. It is easy. It is simple. Just hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's because over 50% of you watching this video haven't done that yet. And the fact that his father is trashing that suggestion and going to leave William with perhaps decades in which to have to deal with Harry and Meghan, because remember, that's how William is thinking. You know, he is thinking in terms of his entire reign, is something that he doesn't like to countenance. And we saw it again, Brittany, over the past few days, over Donald Trump. And we know this is such a sensitive issue within the royal family. And Harry is hugely irresponsible and always has been. So, I mean, here's his statement, of course. In 2001, NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and only time in history. It meant that every allied nation was obliged to stand with the United States and Afghanistan in pursuit of our shared security. Allies answered that call. I served there, I made lifelong friends there, and I lost friends there. The United Kingdom alone had 457 service personnel killed. Thousands of lives were changed forever. Mothers and fathers buried sons and daughters. Children were left without a parent. Families left carrying the cost. Those sacrifices deserve to be spoken about truthfully and with respect, as we all remain united and loyal in the defense of diplomacy and peace. And you posted, Brittany, Prince Harry has no business making any sort of statements on NATO and by extension criticizing President Donald Trump. This sort of brazenness again belies the reason why all his titles and place in the line of succession should be removed. If he can't contain himself and potentially undermines whatever diplomacy is going on behind the scenes, it's a problem that must be dealt with. That's the price of being the son of the king, as he so arrogantly throws around when it suits him. And to that, Brittany, I say hear, hear. And look, can I just say a couple of things about this? Firstly, Trump's comments, he has made clear, were not aimed at British soldiers. There was a lot of hysteria, but of course, Charles actually in some ways dealt with this the proper way, because he used back channels in the Prime Minister to get Trump to take back this statement. But the problem is, Brittany, as far as William sees it, this was a case of Charles siding with Harry again.
It is a really complicated situation here, but yeah, Charles, you could say in some ways is aligning with Harry, but these type of things, Harry inserting himself into these situations needs to be shot down by the palace itself. Because again, the royals are using back channels, are using soft diplomacy to achieve the goals that have been given to them on behalf of the government. Because royals represent in many ways the government, and in some ways the government policies. They may not totally agree with them, but if they are interacting with somebody who is the head of state like Donald Trump, they are given, let's say, here's what the government wants. Can you talk to him about this and massage this issue? And that's just such a critical role that royals play, not only in the UK, but elsewhere in Europe. They're not making policy for themselves, but the government does that, and they are an extension of it. So it's this complex dynamic, and Harry utilizing his title still, making statements that you could say could be interpreted as critical of Donald Trump, a country where he now lives, where Donald Trump is obviously head of state and head of government, is just deeply problematic and shows again the challenge of having a rogue royal who's not listening to anything, not taking the guidelines and just doing whatever they want, utilizing the title. If Harry was just going by Harry Sussex, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But he demands to be called the Duke of Sussex. He demands security because he's the son of the king, the brother of the future king, and all these sorts of things. And it's deeply problematic for the UK going forward overall. And this is why Harry and his kind of brazen behavior needs to be taken a lot more seriously than it is.
Indeed. And for Prince William's friends, this is absolutely a concern, the fact that Charles does seemingly continue to back Prince Harry. Tom Sykes of the Royalist Substack has written specifically on this. He describes it as a significant escalation of the conflict with William over how to deal with Harry. Now, I know some people don't like this reporting, but again, it does back up what I have been talking about for a long time. He writes, news broke that King Charles expressed concern to the White House over Donald Trump's false claim that NATO allies stayed a little off the front line in Afghanistan. Leave aside for a moment the fact that it is an astonishing breach of protocol for a constitutional monarch to A, say this to Trump's people, and B, then brief the press on it. Leave aside also that the late, much lamented Queen Elizabeth II would never have dreamed of doing such a thing. What I want to discuss is how the intervention amounts to a striking show of support for his renegade son, Prince Harry, who was one of the first public figures to challenge Trump's version of events, and how it will also be a slap in the face for Prince William, who has maintained dutiful silence. Harry's statement was already a clear break with the usual expectations that royals avoid direct criticism of a sitting US president on a live foreign policy issue. But as Harry is now a private citizen who has seen active service, many observers, including me, felt his outburst was at least understandable given the glaring inaccuracy of Trump's original claim and the depth of feeling among veterans. The King's role, I'm afraid, looks very different. Charles has served in the armed forces and holds the ceremonial position of head of the military, but has never seen active combat. His decision to allow it to be known that his concerns were passed privately to the White House is a highly provocative move and a calculated departure from strict constitutional neutrality. But it also amounts to an effective endorsement of Harry's intervention. The remarks, therefore, will do little to quell growing speculation that the king is quietly batting for his second son, despite the savage criticism Harry aimed at Charles, Queen Camilla, and the wider institution of the monarchy in his memoir, Spare, and subsequent interviews. In that book and its promotion, Harry portrayed his father as weak and self-absorbed, and memorably accused Camilla of being willing to leave bodies on the street in her determination to rehabilitate her image and become queen, attacks that Charles, by virtue of his position, could not directly answer. The King's Afghanistan intervention is another clear demonstration of where his sympathies lie. The truth is that the Harry issue is fast becoming a proxy war for a broader attempt by Charles to reassert his grip over the institution after 2 years in which power has seemed to be drifting towards his heir during his cancer treatment. Royal sources have been keen in recent months to stress that the king's chemotherapy has been scaled back and that he is doing significantly better, positioning him once again as an active monarch rather than a semi-retired red-eyed figurehead. Behind the scenes, friends of William are furious. They complain that Charles has repeatedly undercut the Prince of Wales' hard line on Harry, first by agreeing to that tea at Clarence House so soon after fresh criticism from California, and now by acquiescing in the restoration of full-blown state-funded security. William, they argue, is being left to deal with the political and public opinion fallout while being painted as the unforgiving brother. The royal households of Charles and William are once again sliding into open competition, with Harry, however, unintentionally becoming part of the argument. Some insiders see the king's apparent readiness to use his relationship with his younger son as a way of signalling both internally and externally that it is still he, not William, who ultimately makes the big calls on security, on reconciliation with Harry, and now it seems on when and how to lean into political controversy. If Harry, as a private citizen, chooses to criticise a foreign leader over a matter close to his heart, that is one thing. He is no longer a working royal, and his words, however inconvenient, do not formally bind the crown. For the monarch himself to do so, even via carefully deniable concerns passed down the line, is another matter entirely. In rallying behind Harry over the Afghanistan row, Charles has not only reopened questions about his own political judgment, but has deepened the rift with his heir, who finds himself once again cast as the hardliner in a family drama that shows no sign of ending. So, Brittany, a huge amount to pick up on there. Over to you.
It was really interesting, Dan, because one of the things I was thinking about as well is that Harry has stated that, or through his people, he stated that when it comes to sharing, let's say, trips that he's doing, if the royal family doesn't say no to him, he feels like they're giving him his blessing, like they're giving their blessing to him. And so very much in the same way, Charles utilizing these back channels to also speak to Trump could definitely be seen by Harry and his team as a blessing on his statement. And again, this is hugely problematic. Harry, yes, is no longer a working royal, but he still very much uses his titles, and he very much still tries to tie himself to the crown. And this is going to be an absolute mess for William to clean up one day if Charles doesn't figure out where he stands here. And Charles, it's all understandable that Charles wants to have a relationship with his younger son, but I really do think he needs to figure out at what cost do you want to have this relationship? Because at this point, he's risking the whole monarchy itself in order just to please Harry. And Harry is just not going to give Charles what he wants out of this scenario. And sometimes as a parent, you need to take the hard line, no matter what your child says, and says, this is the line. I'm going to stay here. If you want to come meet me here, that's fine. But if not, there's consequences. And I think the big challenge here is that there's no consequences ever seemingly to Harry. And so he gets more and more brazen. And the breakdown of Charles's relationship with William, I understand he still wants to be seen as a king, and this cancer diagnosis has definitely been limiting to him. But he also has to accept his age here, and people are looking to the future, unfortunately. And that's sort of the reality of the royal roles and royal life. And so Charles is in a difficult situation here, but he has to actually recognize that his younger son is not helpful at this point and probably will never be helpful. And he has decided to leave, and Charles would be best served to officially cut the ties, officially cut the apron strings. And then if Harry wants to have a relationship without any royal titles attached, Charles is always open to that. But Charles needs to think, I think, less about his personal relationships and more about the dynastic implications of involving Harry in things Harry should not be involved with anymore.
And Brittany, then another big story of our royal week, page 6, revealing new details about Harry's life. And it's certainly not a flattering picture, Brittany. Let me just remind you of the article headlined Royal Warrior to Sideline Spare. Prince Harry's failing new life in Hollywood spotlight crumbles. And of course, they're contrasting what happened in court to what then happened at the Sundance Film Festival. But it's some of the colour here which is more interesting. According to a source, for Harry to go from the hearing on Wednesday and pleading for privacy to then go to Sundance just days after is nuts, said one Hollywood source of the royals' fight with a British newspaper. And then Prince Harry, they say, have said his life in America is what Princess Diana would have wanted for him, but instead they paint a much more miserable picture. They say he is without a steady income, and some around him say without a purpose. And it all raises the question, is Harry sidelined as the spare once again? In some ways, the prince is a glorified house husband, while Markle brings home the artisanal bacon, though even that is not going as planned, off the news that her Netflix lifestyle show has ended. The Post is told that the Sussex coffers are rapidly depleting, with one source in the know saying the couple have had to downsize their staffing. Here are some of the damning quotes, Brittany. Harry's not really doing anything in America, said the source. It seems he is still very wrapped up in the past. There have been rumours that Harry is starting a business, but he and Meghan don't have the best track record. He's really great at service. Look at the success of his Invictus charity. He should just stick with that. But of course, he can't really just stick with that, can he? Because, as the source said, I think Harry's banking on speaking engagements for income right now. And for the first time in their relationship, he and Markle are on different paths when it comes to their professional lives. While the couple teamed up in the past to sign deals with Spotify and Netflix, they now have separate offices, we're told. And I mean, again, that is something we have reported for a long time, but interesting. This is now in the New York Post. Obviously, they're talking about the struggles with As Ever as a brand as well, and the fact that things are not getting much better for Archewell either. But fundamentally, Brittany, what I think is really interesting here is that the fact Harry's sort of unhappiness is now the focus. I mean, a source said that the prince lost touch with his UK pal years ago. I don't think they leave the house much, said the source in the know. Meghan does maybe, but not so much Harry. I mean, this is painting a picture, Brittany, in the American press, not the British tabloids, of a miserable life.
I mean, I'm not surprised at all, Dan. To be quite honest, I have suggested this for a long time for Harry because you have to think about what happened. He was told by his wife, I'm sure, that she has all these connections in Hollywood and there'll be these big producers and everything. And I think he jumped ship with Mexit with stars in his eyes. And 6 years on, has realized what an epic disaster it actually was, and that nothing has gone according to plan. Everything's sort of been a disaster. And now they're left with this mess. And unfortunately for him, like I started putting on Twitter, I started putting Meghan and then in parentheses and Harry because he's there, but he's not really there. She's not really even, I think, including him in many ways in this project where he is attached because he doesn't have any talent here. He doesn't have any creative input into any of these projects. He's basically there to add his name so that she can use it. And so he is essentially listless. He has nothing to do. He doesn't have that many skills. He does have, let's say, some speaking engagements lined up and can grab some bags of cash that way. But I'm going to guess those are going to begin to kind of dry up as well, especially when it comes to some of these big conferences, because they're going to be like, well, what can this guy talk about? He barely graduated high school and like just doesn't have that much to offer for a business convention or something like that. So I think Harry's even going to see those dwindle. He was good, you could say, at being royal in some ways. And his wife took him out of that. And he thought, yeah, I'm going to be better than this. I'm going to get out. And it's like, it's going to be great. But of course, the grass is always greener on the other side. And I think he's figuring out that life in England wasn't that bad. And life in LA, yes, it's beautiful there, but he doesn't have a lot of purpose. I think the family's running out of money. And so the coffers are dwindling. He's probably getting pressured to make money. He can't bring in a lot. And yeah, things aren't going so well for them in California.
No, indeed. I mean, if he was moaning in court about having to be a performing monkey while being a member of the British royal family, that's exactly what he is now at the behest of his wife. Brittany, fascinating analysis as ever. So much more of it at the Royal News Network, which you must subscribe to on YouTube. But we love having you as part of Outspoken. Brittany, thank you so much. And we will speak next week.
The relationship between senior members of the royal family has been under intense public scrutiny for several years. Since Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped back from royal duties, discussions about family dynamics, communication, and decision-making have remained a constant topic in the media. The video claims that King Charles and Prince William are at war, with a growing breakdown and tension between them. It suggests that their differing views on how to handle Harry and Meghan may be causing friction behind the scenes. According to this narrative, one side may favor a more measured or diplomatic approach, while the other may prefer a firmer stance. However, these interpretations are often based on speculation rather than confirmed insight into private discussions. Phrases like "at war" and "breakdown" are highly dramatic and designed to capture attention. While they create a compelling story, they can also exaggerate what may simply be normal differences in opinion within a family. At this time, there is no verified evidence confirming a serious conflict between King Charles and Prince William. The royal family rarely comments on private matters, which leaves room for interpretation and speculation. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are often placed at the center of these narratives. Their decisions and public statements continue to influence how stories about the royal family are framed, even when direct connections are not clearly established. Public perception plays a major role in how these stories evolve. Different audiences may interpret the same situation in very different ways, depending on the information they trust and the media they follow. This situation highlights a broader pattern in royal coverage, where internal dynamics are often portrayed as conflicts. While disagreements may exist, as they do in any family, the extent of those disagreements is rarely fully known. At the end of the day, these are individuals navigating both personal relationships and public responsibilities. Balancing those two aspects can naturally lead to challenges, especially under constant media attention. So, is there truly a war between King Charles and Prince William, or is this another example of headlines amplifying uncertainty? Based on what is currently known, the situation appears far less dramatic than it is being portrayed. What do you think? Could there be real tension behind the scenes, or is this being exaggerated? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more balanced royal news and analysis.